Hey guys, welcome back to 1776 or Bust. So tonight on the table, I'm going to be doing a review on this belt right here. Now this belt is one of those Cobra buckle belts, and it is made by a company called Blue Alpha Gear. Now, I got this belt about 2.5 weeks ago. I didn't want to throw it up on the screen too quickly because I wanted to run it through its paces and get some good time behind it to see if it really stood up to what I wanted it to do. Now, I've been carrying recently these holsters for the past 2.5 weeks on and off in regards to just making sure that this belt could handle the weight of a hybrid holster with an M&P compact or a CZ-P01 or whatever else I was carrying at that point. Again, I carried my Glock 19X with this. I carried several guns just to see how it was going to play on the waist. And so far, I'm going to tell you that I would give this an absolute thumbs up in regards to quality. We're going to go over a little bit of it. One of the things that I wanted to touch base with you on before we go to the tabletop is just so you can see that this belt has a lot of flex in it. Now, what you're going to realize is that the flex actually takes place where you want it to, and that's on the rear of this belt. One of the things that I found about this belt is that as you go to the sides where you're normally going to carry your gun, even in the appendix area, what you're going to find is that it is extremely rigid on the sides and just has more flex to the rear. Now, for people who want a super rigid belt, I'm going to tell you that, yes, it may be a good thing to have because your gun won't move very much, but good luck on trying to carry that and being comfortable, especially if you're bending down, especially if you're sitting down and moving a lot, because a belt that's super rigid will be literally like wearing, in my opinion, a 2x4 around your waist, and you won't exactly have that good mobility where this belt, because it has a little bit more flexibility in that front, you're going to get that flexibility in the trunk of your body. However, you're not going to see that lateral sway, which is going to allow this belt to hold that gun intact and in place. So let's go to the table. I'm going to compare this to two other Cobra buckle belts that I have and kind of go about what I found on the other two compared to this one. So let's go to the table and let's take a look. All right, so back to the table we go. So obviously you see I have my Alpha Gear or Blue Alpha Gear belt right here. And, I'm going to say to you that when I first got this belt, I was a little bit leery of it, and I'm going to explain why. Now, keep in mind, anytime I get a product to review, I'm not going to do a review right away because what tends to happen is over time as you use it, you begin to find either flaws in it or you actually begin to see benefits of it. Now, initially, when I pulled this out of the packaging, I was a little concerned because the belt felt like it was a little bit flimsy. Now, that's not a negative. That's just what my initial impression was. So immediately I said, oh boy, I hope this is actually a good belt. So of course, I put it on, I got my gun out, I got my holster out. And one of the things that I definitely wanted to do is I wanted to carry heavier guns, I wanted to carry bigger guns, and I also wanted to carry bigger holsters. So I ran my 19X with this, my full-size Smith & Wesson M&P, my Steyr, which is a heavy gun. And, ultimately, my thoughts about it initially, while I thought that it was a flimsy belt, it began to change very quickly because when I began to put this into use, I realized that there's a lot of, to me, a lot of interesting things about how this belt actually operated while I was using it. Now, before I get to this actual belt, I actually want to show you two other belts that I also have that Cobra belt buckle system. So give me 1 second, I'll bring them up. All right, so the first belt I have here, I actually bought this probably a year and a half ago, and this was my first kind of dive into the Cobra belt system, or at least the buckle system. Now, I think a lot of people, when they look at belts, they right away begin to think about, I want a belt that is going to flex or not going to flex too much, a belt that is actually going to work the way I need it to. And, I think sometimes we get caught up in that kind of conversation, how flexible of a belt do you really need? Now, for me, I always thought you needed to have the world's most rigid belt. If you strapped a 2x4 around your waist and were able to carry a gun, I thought that would be the best thing for you. So when I got this belt, my immediate impression on this thing was, wow, this is so rigid. This is going to be the best carry belt ever. And while it did its job, and it did it pretty well because this sucker is rigid, it almost did it too well. And what I mean by that is that this thing has absolutely no give. There's no forgiveness in this belt whatsoever. As a matter of fact, if I push down on this belt, it immediately will pop back into place. Now, do I think this is a good belt? I think it's a good belt. Do I think this would be a belt that I'd want to carry 24/7? Absolutely not. And the reason being is because it has really no flexibility and really no forgiveness. And what I mean by that is that over time, without that flexibility, this is going to drive you crazy because you can't bend very well. It's going to really drive into your waistline. So it can be extremely uncomfortable. Short stints, maybe. Go to the range, something like that, it would work. But I think if you're driving, if you're sitting, and you're really using your carry more as kind of just an everyday type of deal, this gun belt is probably going to be a little too rigid. Nice belt, just a little bit too rigid. Now, the next Cobra Belt buckle that I got was the Vetter belt. Now, this belt, in my opinion, they did a lot of things right with this belt. I don't really have anything negative to say. Everything is nicely stitched. You have the smaller version of the Cobra Belt buckle. And I think that's an advantage, obviously, because you can get it through belt loops. Again, it's nicely stitched. It's fairly rigid. One of the things that I did notice about this belt is while it does function very well, there's a little bit more give on the sides of this belt in regards to the flexibility than the Blue Alpha gear, and I'll show that to you in a minute. Again, it's pretty flexible in the rear, but it's a little bit flexible on the side-to-side movement on the Vetter belt. So again, some people would think that's good because it gives you a little bit more movement. Again, I've never had any issues with it, but that is something definitely you want to look at. I mean, do you want something that's a little bit more rigid, or do you want something that maybe, has a little more flexibility and some rigidity as well? Now let's get to the last belt. As all of my belts just fell. So here we go with the Blue Alpha gear. Now, again, I would repeat, my initial impression was that this thing was going to be a little too flimsy, that it wasn't going to do its job. Now, you can see that it does have a significant amount of flex in the back, and some people, again, may think that's a negative. I actually think that's a positive, especially if you're carrying all day. That gives you a little bit more freedom of movement, and that is something that, in my opinion, is absolutely essential, especially if you guys are carrying as often as I do. And if you're sitting, if you're driving, if you're moving, if you have kids and you're trying to do things with them, you want to have that play in the belt, because what it's going to do is going to give you a little bit more of a comfortable fit. So you do get a lot of play in there. Now, again, is this a negative? For some people, it will be. What I found on all the guns I was carrying, this belt held every single thing just perfectly, guys, to be honest with you. Now, one of the things that I did like about it, again, is that Blue Alpha gear carried over what they call their female buckle. And again, you have the Cobra Belt buckle. It's smaller, so it does fit through the belt loops, which again, I think is the way that all these Cobra Belt buckles need to go through. If you've ever had them where they're full size, like the size of this, they can be a nightmare to get through some of your pant loops. And with the smaller size, it definitely works very well. Again, they use two pieces of nylon webbing, and it's good quality. I mean, there's nothing seems to be, falling apart. I mean, again, it's only been 2.5 weeks, but it's been constant use. Again, nice reinforced stitching. Apparently, what they're using here is the same color as the belt, which I think is pretty cool. You don't want to have any weird looking stitching here. Again, it's I think what they did with this, I'm not certain, but it's a nylon thread, and apparently it's bonded, so it makes it a little bit stronger than just regular threading. And you can see they've reinforced a couple of places here. You can see they've reinforced this area that holds on. Oh, I got to get that in camera, duh. You can see that they reinforced this area. You've got a nice cross stitching here, and of course the rectangular stitch. So it definitely reinforces that area, so you know it's not necessarily going to break down anytime soon, and that's very smart in my opinion. Again, here you get that, and I'll show you the Velcro. But you get a pretty long piece of Velcro. So, I mean, it does give you that adjustability. Again, you want to go with your pant size. So whatever your pant size is, that's what you'd want to get. Now, again, initially, I was a little concerned because I thought the belt would be a little bit too small. But overall, it actually fits just really perfectly. I got my pant size on it, and it is absolutely perfect. I mean, could I have gone bigger? I probably could have. But I think this is actually just the perfect fit for me. So I would definitely recommend going with your pant size as a size that you'd need. Again, all the Velcro on here, you can see it's fortified here with the double stitching as well. So, I mean, it's very good quality. Nothing is fraying at all. It seems like it's really nice. They definitely reinforce all the places that they need to. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the rigidity. Now, again, you see the flex in the back. One of the things that I noticed is that as you get closer to the area that you're actually going to be carrying your gun. And again, I don't know how they did this. I don't know if it's based on the stitching or whatever. But one thing that I did notice as I was carrying my gun, I actually carried it on this side. The first clip I had, because I was carrying my hybrid holster from Black Arch, the first clip laid right about here, and then the second clip was right about there. Now, what I noticed here is that as you move further back, it just, for whatever reason, it just gets super rigid. And as you get a little bit closer to where you're going to be carrying, it actually gets more rigid. And I think that's actually very interesting. Again, I don't know if it's just me, but that's something I did find as a pretty interesting feature. I mean, overall, 2.5 weeks I've been carrying with this particular belt. And again, like I said, I've carried all different sizes of handguns that I own, from the Shield all the way up to the 19X to my Steyr M9. And I've got to tell you guys that, this Blue Alpha Gear belt is serious business. It is absolutely a fantastic belt. I think if you were really looking for a good quality belt, you couldn't go wrong with this. I think it really does, in my opinion, compare very, very well with the Vetter belt. And that says something, because we all know Vetter has a great name. Blue Alpha Gear, I think, absolutely hit a home run with this belt. It is the same quality. It is definitely a usable belt, and it's an all-day long comfortable belt. I mean, overall, I'm very pleased with it. I would highly recommend it if you're looking for a good gun belt. I don't think you're going to be disappointed whatsoever. So I hope you guys have a great night. Again, leave some comments down below if you have any questions, or if you have any comments, if you have one of these belts, or whatever belt you use and why. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Should be an interesting conversation. Again, we always appreciate the thumbs up if you want to. It's up to you. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe. And as always, freedom is never free.